Welcome to the Vibrant Life podcast. I'm Sarah Nolan, a burnout prevention and energy management consultant, and I'm here with Joseph Rodrigues. Welcome, Joseph. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joseph, this is a special treat that we have. It's like divine timing that we're even talking today.
Yes.
And he is a popular YouTuber in the space of entrepreneurship and personal development. And he's got some incredible videos that I'm going to share the links to at the end, having to do with really designing and creating your ideal life through manifestation and spiritual means. And I'm in a whole lot more than that as well. So today, Joseph's going to talk about how in 2013, he transitioned from his IT company to this YouTube venture, and he made his first YouTube video in 2013. So he's going to talk about this profound journey that he was on during that experience. Joseph, how many subscribers do you have on your YouTube channel now?
It's about 135,000 right now.
Okay, so it's beginning of 2020 today. And so in 2013, you made your first video. That's amazing. So yeah, tell us like how that all started, how you got into IT and how that transitioned. Like, how did you realize that you wanted to start a YouTube channel?
So I got into IT. I grew up with it. I grew up with computers. And then I went to go work in corporate at the age of 20, worked my way up in corporate. I thought I was going to eventually move up in corporate into higher executive or move into entrepreneurship. So in 2008, I read two books, The 4-Hour Workweek and The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And The Alchemist talked about this following your own personal legend. And I started to tap into that. And I said, if I was going to do something for the next phase of my life, I wanted to do something that I was really passionate about, because I was kind of getting bored with doing corporate IT. It wasn't as stimulating.
Yeah.
So I had this idea of leaving and starting an IT business, which I did. I tendered my resignation and left and started an IT business. And the first couple of years were hard. And then I eventually figured out the whole business building stuff. I grew it up to 50 clients. And I was really happy with everything was going. And then again, I was met with a fork in the road. Mm-hmm. It was now, okay, what do I love about this? And what is not who I am?
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there for a second. How most people don't pay attention to that stuff. They don't pay attention to the fact that you have choices and options and that you can like choose your preference. Like most people say, okay, this is making money. We just have to go with this. So how did you, what have you always been like that? Where you're very preference oriented and, you want to continuously improve on what's working?
You know, I went into corporate because I was passionate about IT. Mm-hmm. I thought that was me. So yes, there's always been a part of me that did what I love to do and made that a priority, mm-hmm. and listened to my inner voice. And I believe there was also a part of me that didn't. And throughout this journey, I started to listen more and more to my inner voice. And right now at this current state that I'm in, I listen so much to my inner voice that even like the most nuanced decision as to where I'm going to go eat and where I'm going to go if I decide to go away for a week is based on listening to my inner voice. And so it's been an evolution for me of releasing aspects within myself. I call them elements of my self-image, mm-hmm. and aligning with what I call the higher self. And my higher self is my true self. And now I kind of can go and talk to my higher self and identify pieces in my reality that is harmonious or inharmonious to that. Mm. And it wasn't as pronounced as it is now, but in 2013, when I had this hunch of, look, I don't feel like doing this IT stuff anymore, I realized that what I loved about it was being an entrepreneur. I love the freedom. I love the business building stuff. I'm a huge fan of marketing, selling, all the business stuff, operations. I just love entrepreneurship as a whole. However, the actual service I was providing, I felt that it wasn't totally, even though it was IT and I love IT, I felt the part that I loved the most about it was connecting with people and helping them see perspectives about their business, because I was dealing with business owners, right?
Right.
All my clients were business owners I was dealing right with. They're small businesses. And I really liked having these deep conversations about evolving as an entrepreneur and taking risks and all this kind of stuff that entrepreneurs love to talk about. Mm-hmm. And I said I would love to tackle consulting. So I made a decision that I was going to transition away from it, and I started selling off my clients and transitioning some of my other clients in other ways. It wasn't like totally clean. And then I had this idea to get rid of all my possessions. So save a bunch of money, get rid of all my possessions, and fit it into a backpack.
Was that in 2013?
Yes. Which I did. I got rid of everything and fit the essentials into this backpack. And it wasn't a large backpack.
Yeah.
And at that time, my ex-girlfriend was from Austria in Europe. And I moved down to Austria. I just packed everything in the backpack. And the day we left the place that we were staying, because we had a temporary rental, I said, hey, can you make a video of me explaining what's in my backpack? I think this would be a great video. And, I was dabbling with YouTube and stuff, and I was trying to figure out, I thought, if I'm going to do something next, it's got to be something I'm excited about. So in that moment, I felt excited to make this video. So I'm like, whenever I feel excited about something, I know that if I follow that pathway, I can turn it into business, because I have the business building skills and I have the entrepreneurial side. And at a core, I'm an entrepreneur. I've always known this about myself. So I made the video, I put it up there, and it started getting all these views. And it became really popular really fast. The video is still on my channel. It's called Living Out of a Backpack. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, maybe I got a niche here. Maybe I can start talking about this lifestyle of being a minimalist, because I'm a huge fan of that.
Now, this was your first video, which means it probably wasn't tagged, and it probably didn't have all these components that people get really particular about right now. Is that true? Or did you have all that back end stuff going on?
I had a bit of, because I built the IT business, so I had some marketing background. Okay. I didn't go super granular into it. I just put a compelling headline that said, Living Out of a Backpack, My Minimalism Story, which is pretty compelling, right? So
right, exactly.
Didn't have like some fancy thumbnail or anything.
So it was like mostly the content that was like driving all the traffic to this.
Yeah. It's a very authentic video about my experience. And I believe that a lot of people that are on YouTube are interested in this, and they also aspire to do this. So it was a very popular topic, and I believe it still is.
Yeah.
So I made the video, I put it out there, and then I was kind of playing around with doing some more minimalism videos, but again, I didn't really feel totally passionate about it. I couldn't see myself building a whole business around the concept of minimalism, because I have a passion for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So I started making these book discussion videos, and the first videos I did was Influence the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. And one of my things that helped me in life was this concept called mind mapping, which is a note-taking style. So I did kind of very poorly in school because I didn't know how I learned. So it's not because I wasn't smart or I wasn't gifted and had the abilities. It's just that my learning style is my learning style. And I believe we're all like that. And when we uncover our learning style and how we learn, we actually discover that we are good at learning. So mind mapping became this thing that I used to help me with learning complexity and building my business and so forth. Even in my later stages in corporate, I used it to advance myself up in the different skills and the capabilities. And it was a really helpful tool. So I started making these videos where I would record mind maps on the screen and me explaining it, because I could speak and I can teach really well with mind maps. And then these videos started to get popular. And during the time, I was just kind of doing things on the side. I was taking on some consulting deals, coaching deals. I was creating info products. I was doing a bunch of things and still doing some IT services to really figure out what was going to happen next. And the channel really didn't start to grow until like a full-fledged, like rapid growth, I think, around 2016. So I was constantly doing all these other things. By the way, I was having so much fun. But during the journey this time, I was open to all these different possibilities. And I just kept observing, practicing self-awareness to see what I enjoyed about coaching, consulting, and all these other things that I do now primarily, and just doing more of the things that I like to do while letting go of the things that I did not like to wasn't really interested in, which now I realize it's not part of my higher self. So I believe that when you're connected with your higher self, then you're doing what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, which by the way is called Ikigai. It's a Japanese acronym.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of that. So it turns out that right now, everything I do is so aligned and harmonious that 2019 that just passed, I noticed that I was in flow. I'm a huge fan of the concept of flow. Most of the day, like 90% of the day, I was in flow, and I'm always in flow now, most of the time I'm in flow, because I found what I am so passionate about, what I'm also good at, and what my audience receives me for really well. So as a result, I'm fully booked with coaching clients, and everything is just growing really fast, and I'm just loving it. It's just so much fun. So I found my sweet spot, and this might just be for now, but it is exactly where I want to be.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love that you mentioned self-awareness and being in flow 90% of the day. What do you feel like what are some methods that help you to create that self-awareness and to maintain that flow?
So I'm a big fan of the power of the subconscious mind. I came across this book. So 2004, what started this journey for me was Think and Grow Rich. That's when like my life started to transform.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered the movie The Secret, and I started coming across all these concepts about reality that was so polarizingly different than what I was used to before. And then I came across the power of the subconscious mind, and I started following what was in the book, Joseph Murphy. And it would work. My behaviors would change. And then I realized that, whoa, the subconscious mind stuff, all I have to do is go in and change it using the processes outlined, and then I will change. And not just like in some like, logical way, like a radical change, an environment would change. Mm-hmm. And I would operate more from a place of, I call it real power versus force. So instead of like force. And I didn't grasp it right away, not like totally. I went on this journey for an extended period of time. But then what happened is, as I started to make a video, when I made a video talking about that, it became one of my most popular videos. And then I started saying, you know what, I'm going to start.
About the subconscious mind.
Yeah, I'm going to start discussing this more. And as a result of discussion, and when I make my videos, I always share based on my experience. They're not like discussions of like, here's this book I read or whatever, here's this concept. Right. I like to really experiment. I'm a huge fan of like trying things out and testing it on myself and others, and a lot of different variations to see what works before I share it. And I believe that's valuable for my audience. Now, when I started to go deeper into this power of the subconscious mind, I noticed that I started to see the correlations between my inner world and my outer world into such a distinct way that a lot of times I would find that others around me couldn't see it. And I would see it more and more and more the more I reflected back upon the different experiences that I'd have every day.
What are some examples of that? Okay.
Well, a perfect example is I'm a huge fan of communication skills. And for many years, I would teach these speed reading workshops for iris reading, and I would do these events. And what I would notice is that the way that I presented myself, my mood, and how I felt would be reflected in the audience. So in the beginning, the first 5 minutes when I was a little bit nervous, the audience seemed nervous. And then boom, all of a sudden I got into a mode where I got really present, authentic, and expressive because I really was passionate about what I was talking about, but now the authenticity was there. The audience went into this different state. Then it got into a point where I would start to notice that if I change my tonality around or change my body language around, the audience body language would change. And then I was like, what is this stuff? And then I noticed that with people everywhere I go. And I love meeting people. And I noticed that people were exact mirrors of what was within me. And all I had to do is change myself within, and they would change in front of me. And I'm like, this is some interesting stuff here. Because I was taught in the world of marketing and business that you had to do this and that in the outer world. But I'm like, this is real power, what David Hawkins talks about in Power versus Force, where you change the world within and the outer world changes.
So powerful with relationships.
Yes. And so, and as a result of that, I started learning about different kind of self-awareness pieces, like through observation, but now I focus more on how I feel in an interaction with somebody or what I'm doing something, because that reveals everything about what I am putting out and what I'm going to receive as a result of it. That's when I really got into the work of Neville Goddard. As you see now on my channel, I talk a lot about Neville Goddard stuff because he articulates it really well. And he says, everyone is you pushed out, which is, by the way, one of my favorite sayings.
I love that. You pushed out. You know, when you started learning all of this about the reflection, you know, how everybody that you're with is a reflection of yourself, did you start applying that to your personal relationships?
Yes.
And how did that work for you?
Well, I got out of my last serious long-term relationship in 2016, and this journey of discovering this you pushed out piece really amplified itself in 2018. And then I really put it to use in my dating at that time. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that everyone that I was dating was, yet again, always a reflection of me. And then all I had to do if I went on a dating experience where it was favorable or had aspects of it that I enjoyed, I found it harmonious, and aspects that weren't harmonious, is identify where that inharmoniousness was within me. And I would change that within me, evolve that within me using subconscious mind work. Mm-hmm. And then I found that the next date that I was on didn't have that. And it kept going and going and going. And then I met my current girlfriend, and we got into a relationship, and that became like this big thing that now is the premise of our relationship and it's new for her as well. And it's new for me to this degree, where if something shows up, by the way, when it shows up, I get reactive. It's not like, you know, it just shows up and then I'm like, oh, that's me reflected in you. It doesn't, at least not, I'm not at the level where I can experience it like that. There's things that show up where I'm reactive.
Right.
And then it takes me a moment, sometimes longer, sometimes in the moment, where I pause or we have a conversation. It's like, well, it's me within that I'm experiencing through you, or on my side, it's me that I'm experiencing through her. And then I reflect on what it is. We have conversations about it, and then that changes. And then the relationship just changes, or that aspect changes. And what I've realized about this is a lot of things that I was doing in my past was designed to make a relationship work, like make it work.
Right.
Whereas now it's more about evolving self and seeing what's reflected.
Yeah. And I can relate to that with my husband. Like we've been together since 2001. I don't know how many years that is, but one of the most amazing things that I noticed when I started doing subconscious work myself was how my relationship changed so dramatically, and how like the behaviors even changed, like with my kids and with my husband. And it's not even, you know, when there's like an interaction that causes that reaction.
Yes.
What I've seen is that it's not even the behaviors and the words. It's like we're all running on different belief systems. So when we're experiencing a dialogue with somebody, you know, we're experiencing it with our own belief system, and they may, you know, change zero behaviors, but then the way we perceive it with that reflection is so powerful. And it's like, if I could have people change one thing, it would be that. I mean, so tell us, what did you see changing in your life when you started to apply these subconscious principles?
Well, let's talk about one of the recent ones, which was a big one for me this last year. So as a result of the popularity of my channel, I made this decision that I was going to take on coaching clients, because I was doing consulting, business consulting. And once in a while, I was kind of doing a little bit of coaching, but I said, I want to go into this coaching space, because I realized that most of entrepreneurship success has to do with this self-image. Mm-hmm. You can give somebody, and I was like this myself, a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom on business building and whatnot. But if the self-image doesn't identify with that success, they'll take that information or the tool or technology and they won't be able to create the result. Like they wouldn't be able to make it work because everywhere you go, there you are. It's one of my favorite sayings.
Yeah.
So if we identify what's within ourselves that is causing us to not realize that we have this acres of diamonds. And I love one of my favorite books, Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell. And understand how this fits into our vision. If we don't work on that, then, we'll have that end result of not getting the result. So I said, I'm going to put more emphasis on this because this is where it is, the leverage point for entrepreneurs. And so I made way more videos about this kind of stuff. And I wanted to take on more coaching clients to practice this. Mm-hmm. Then what happened was I started to uncover beliefs I had about the coaching and consulting experience, including a belief that I heard many coaches and consultants share with me about the experience. And they said, because I was doing 3 to 4 calls a day, because when I get into something, I really get into it. So I took on so many clients, and I was doing 3 to 4 coaching calls Monday to Friday. And at the end of the day, I felt tired and kind of burnt out. But I wanted to learn, and I was learning so much and growing and serving them. And it was such a great experience, and they were enjoying it. Everyone was liking it, and I was getting better. But then I said, why do I feel tired at the end? And then I remember it just came up that all the stuff in my subconscious about what I had heard about coaching and consulting from other coaches and consultants, that, you have a certain amount of clients, it makes you feel drained and this. And I said, I'm going to use my subconscious mind process to change it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm going to create a new belief that says, I love serving my clients. I love what I do so much. It is who I am. After the experiences that I have with them, they are elevated. I'm elevated. They get the results. I get the knowledge and insight. And I feel energized at the end of the day as a result. And then I affirmed that. And it started to happen. I now feel, after my coaching calls, I did like 4 or 5 yesterday, and I'm doing 3 or 4 today. Even prior to our call, I think I had about 3. Can't remember. But my schedule is booked, and I got videos to record, and I always feel in flow and energized. Then I uncovered a very important piece of information that I learned from Neville Goddard. In one of his lectures, he says, to the degree that I am self-persuaded that they are that way, they will become so. And I said, that's the key right there. Instead of trying to change them, I communicate based on their version that they want to see. That they, by the way, already shared with me in the beginning of our process. They say, I see myself like this. And all I have to do is just communicate to that, and they adjust to that in the conversation.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is a great session. And that's hardly any work at all, because that's their true self. So it's draining then to try to get them to do things, but to communicate with their true self, which is what they want to be, is actually releasing, and it's like letting go. So it's like an energizing conversation. So that was a big one for me.
Yeah. And I think maybe this is something you experienced with some of these coaches, some of these myths you heard about coaching. A lot of people who are helpers, who are helping others, they focus on the problems, and then they're not able to see that elevated version because they're seeing the problem. And it sounds like you've been able to see your clients and people that you work with in this it's not even elevated, it's just who they are. And in that vibration, we're allowed to say vibration on this.
Yes.
In that vibration.
We're also allowed to say everyone is you pushed out.
Yeah. It's funny. What comes to mind when I think that is like a woman giving birth, but
that's
anyway.
Very symbolic. I need to reflect upon that.
Yeah. You pushed out. What are you giving birth to?
Yeah.
But man, being in the vibration of the true self is so energizing. And then It's like it keeps being reflect back and forth, as you see them in their true vibration, they are influenced by that, and they're able to see you in your true vibration, and it just like reverberates.
Yes. And the cool part about that vibration state, sometimes I say state, sometimes I say vibration, is when they're in that vibration, when they're in that state, the behavioral changes happen, the perspective shifts happen, and I don't have to tell them. They already have that same thought that is the ideal thought for them. And they came up with it on their own. And they're excited about it.
Yeah.
And, we are entrepreneurs because we like to do our own thing. And what do we want to do? We want to discover at the core, every entrepreneur wants to do this. I realized from my journey and from working with many entrepreneurs is they want to identify and express this higher self and share it with others through their products and services. Mm. And they know as a result of that, they will receive the value. They will get paid. Which, took me on this very important journey of evolving perspectives surrounding money, which Think and Grow Rich helped me a lot. And the perspective that I had prior to that was one of scarcity and so forth. Mm-hmm. But my belief now is that the higher self, when identified, and its identification is a journey process, at least it was for me, mm-hmm. and it continues to be, and expressed, creates that. The products and services that I create are a net result of identifying and being my higher self and having that expressed. And then I'm passionate about the marketing. I'm passionate about the selling. And even some of the more mystical things happen. For example, I get the exact kind of clients that I want. Mm-hmm. The clients show up to the calls and they are having the same experiences that I just recently overcame, which now I can give them the gift, and they're going through something that I'm also going through that allows me to deeply reflect upon, so that when they show up on the next call, I can help them with that, or put it in my videos. That's why my videos have gotten better.
Yeah.
And also they give me solutions which I can then reflect upon based on something that I've experienced and that I've solved. And now I have 2 reference experience that shows up in the next client session who has the need to solve whatever that is that they're looking to solve. And now I've got 2 reference experiences. So it ends up being this, did we say basket weaving earlier?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like a basket weaving process of connecting all these, all this value together. And I believe it's a result of this identifying the higher self and allowing the higher self to be the self-image more and more so each day, and having it expressed. And that's what I call true authenticity.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And it sounds like what you're talking about is it's like, a lot of people call it like the one mind. There's we're really all just one being, yes, like every person. That. And we're just seeing these little aspects of ourselves. And it sounds like you are really facilitating bringing it all together and weaving them so that people can it's like symbiotic.
Yes.
Everybody learns from each other, and it just goes back and forth, and everybody becomes elevated by it. It's so cool.
And it's amazing because I also got this from Neville. He articulates this stuff really well. Mm-hmm. We've always been learning this stuff in the journey.
Right.
We just meet different teachers who articulate it differently, right? And then they're like, oh, it clicks. And then it clicks mm-hmm. again, and it clicks again, and it clicks again. One of the things he said is about this, we're all a mind. And then some way, somehow it came to my mind, individual expressions of the same mind.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, it's all one mind. And these are all individual expressions made up of this one mind. And these individual expressions at the core are self-images. Mm. And these self-images exist nowhere but in the imagination. And I like what William Blake once said is, man is all imagination. We are all imagination. So the self-image exists in the imagination. It exists in the subconscious imagination. So a lot of times we're not aware, which is why I really like what Carl Jung said about making the darkness conscious. And I believe he was referring to when he said darkness conscious, is the aspects of ourself in our self-image that we're not aware of yet consciously, that is creating the reality that we're living in. And then when we realize that this is what it is, we say, well, we can change this self-image around. Mm-hmm. And then all these beliefs that we have about the rigidity, physically, mentally, emotionally, even physical, can be changed and observed in behavioral change, in reality changes, in people changing, and everything changes as a result of this self-image change. So that's why I put way more emphasis now on this self-image, because the entrepreneur is looking to create products and services that are needed and useful and to benefit from it, to have a life that they can enjoy and then serve others through it. And the factor that allows it to be so, I believe, is receiving this higher self and having it be what they operate from, this higher self. And then all that becomes a reality. And that's how I maintained the flow last year, because it's fun. I mean, I'm having fun in this. Mm-hmm. This is a fun conversation. Are you having fun?
I'm having a ton of fun. Yeah.
Like, and everyone I know who continuously practices this finds that they have more joy doing what they're loving, doing what they love to do. And it's a service. It's a service because people are paying you for it. So they're receiving value and they're reciprocating. It's a service. It's a product. It's a service. And it, by the way, doesn't necessarily have to be through coaching, consulting. It could be through leadership. Mm-hmm. It could be like, if I decide tomorrow that, I want to move on and create something in the brick and mortar world, I wanted to open up some kind of whatever, a retail store or some kind of service that is outside of the space, it will still be infused with this, because it's the service you provide and also the spirit of service. Because I learned that from Napoleon Hill. He said, quality of service, quantity of service, and spirit of service. Mm-hmm. You know this when you go to a nice restaurant and they love the food that they're making and they're so passionate about it. The food tastes even better. The service is even better.
Yeah,
you can feel it. And then their business grows. It's one of my favorite movies is Hero Dreams of Sushi. You ever watch that?
Oh, I have not watched that. What's it called?
Hero Dreams of Sushi.
All right.
So I believe he's a Michelin 3-star. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I can watch that. I've seen that documentary like 3 or 4 times, and I'll watch it again and again. Now that we're talking about it, I want to watch it again. Like, here's somebody that's living that. He's so into what he does that he's not interested in anything else, not from a place of force. Not like, I'm not interested. Mm-hmm. He's so passionate about this. And then when he's in the restaurant, people receive that value. And, there's a waiting list. Like, I don't even know what the waiting list is. It's probably like years before you can get a table there. Right. And he does it his way. It's his certain way. There's so much nuance to that. I love that. I love that movie. I have to watch it again because, I always believe that as you evolve in this higher self, as you connect to your higher self and you live from this higher self, information and movies and people appear different.
Yes.
You pick up even more things that you might not have seen before because that part of you was not there that can see it. Right?
Yeah.
At least that's how I interpret it.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. When it comes to flow, I feel like a lot of people think it's maybe woo-woo, or they feel like they don't have time for that, or there are a lot of objections to being in the flow, or maybe they don't think it's possible for themselves. But hearing what you're talking about and the impact that you have on people because the flow puts you in that vibration, it really seems like it's our responsibility to be in flow and to elevate conversations and elevate experiences and provide that mirror for people. You know what I mean?
Yes. And, so I come from a computer engineering kind of background, computer, very logical, and I'm also very spiritual, as you can see. I have a very spiritual side and I have a very logical side. I embrace both, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, logically. All is one, all is one, right? Now, one of the things I've learned about flow is there's a good book. There's 2 good books. One's called Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. There's probably many other books on this. And the other one's called Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler. And Stephen Kotler gets into, I believe, the science surrounding it all the way down to like a neurotransmitter level. Mm-hmm. And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about it from the perspective of really what flow is where challenge meets skill. Computer programmers experience flow. Athletes experience flow. When you are on these sessions and doing calls with your clients and doing the work that you do, I'm sure you experience flow. Mm-hmm. It's where you're engaged in the moment and you've got some challenge, but you're engaged in it and you want to solve it. It's like a puzzle. Mm-hmm. So it's not a far out concept. And if you look back at what we were discussing, and I reflect back on this conversation as well, is last year I found the areas that I emphasized putting more awareness on that were challenging and growth oriented, and I was developing the skill to rise up to it. So flow is where challenge meets skill, where challenge is just a bit higher than the skill, and then you stay engaged in the process, and then you acquire the skill, and then you rise up to a higher degree of challenge and rise up to a higher degree of skill, and it keeps going and going and going. So that's the way I look at flow. I look at it from that's and we'll reflect upon our own lives. That's when we've made the most progress.
Right.
And the reason why I picked living life this way is because when I look back upon my life all the way, as far back as I can remember, every time where I found the greatest amount of growth in myself, because I'm a huge fan of personal growth, and also created the most skill, which I can then translate into value, because I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always trying to figure out how to translate it into value. It was when I was in flow. And so I said, what if I just honor that? What if I just make that a priority? Well, then all these other things started to happen.
Yeah. I can say the same in my experiences too. And I think the biggest thing is like for people to know that you deserve to be in flow. Like you don't have to struggle.
Yes.
Things don't have to be hard. And I know a lot of people feel like if it feels good, then they're not allowed to do that. They have to earn their money by doing things that are hard and challenge. And challenge is can be very positive, but I have to struggle for their money.
I've had both experiences because in my earlier stages, I just wanted to make money.
Right.
And I can get myself to do things whether I feel like doing it or not. I know how to do that.
Right.
And I'll get the results. And I can get myself in flow and I can get the results. Now, I have a preference. I pick flow. The reason why I pick flow is because with this one, I had some side effects with it. And it's individual to each experience. The side effects that I had for this was I found that I was unpleasant around people. I found this kind of energy that I carried around that was more tense. And, everyone is you pushed out. So then everyone is tense in front of me. And then I was like, they had this like butting head kind of experience. And so this is why I prefer being in flow. And by the way, I've even tracked it because I've got that very analytical side to me. I have KPIs and spreadsheets and everything to track everything. And I've tracked way more progress and results through flow than through that. Why? Because in this one, I get burnt out and tired and frustrated and waste a lot of time and end up doing things which I call busy work masquerading as accomplishment. Whereas in flow, you're present. There's a deep presence. And so you can see things that you might not see when over here, you might be in your head, you get stuck in your head here. At least that's my experience. I get stuck in my head. So I'd have this bias of, I want to do it. And I would not see the obvious right there. That was sitting right there. But in flow, I can see the obvious a lot more. And so I can pivot a lot easier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you noticed a difference between, do you ever find yourself doing things that you should do versus things that you want to do or you feel like you're like meant to do?
Do you ever find myself doing things that I'm meant to do?
Yeah, where it feels like you're like guided to do it. Like, I feel guided to call this person or whatever.
Yes. When I'm in flow, I get it. I get these kind of things that show up when I'm in flow. I have found from my personal experience that when I'm in flow, more of these synchronicities and hunches and intuitions and mystical experiences occur. I see it. Yeah.
And do you, because I know you focus on flow a lot and you are intentional about being in flow a lot. I just know from my experience and a lot of people that I talk with, when they get in that space of like, I should do this. Everybody's telling me to do this. Like, this is what you're supposed to do for this kind of a process. Like with YouTube, people say you should do certain things to get certain results. Did you ever fall into that yourself, or do you find yourself still kind of sometimes doing that?
Yeah, I fell into it. And sometimes I do this stuff and it works. It produces a result. Sometimes it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is I have probably broken a lot of the trends of how it should be done in the business and marketing world, because my
Yeah.
videos are very long. They're like an hour and a half long. And everyone's like, you make short videos. And I broke that rule, and my business does really well as a result of it. And it's very unique.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have videos of me talking like this. They're all mind map videos like this. And there's a lot of things that I do that violate the best practices of the marketing world. So it seems, here's the thing, it appears that way, but at a deeper level, it's not. Because there are principles that I believe that are universal in marketing and business. And when one understands the principles, and a lot of times you'll find yourself tapping into the principles when you listen to your inner voice. This is a very interesting thing. It's like we always knew the principles.
Right.
You know? And so there is things that one can do to optimize and so forth. And my preference on the matter, and what helps me the most right now, is to always consult with my inner voice. When I go into my inner voice, I realize, you know what, they're right from their perspective. It works from them, for them. Mm-hmm. But I know that this is going to work, and I don't know how, but I really want to do this. So I'll do it and it'll work. And you find your own unique way. And, you know, Steve Jobs said it really well. He says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You connect them looking backwards. And one of my realizations of reality, and contributing to this again, was Neville Goddard. He calls it the bridge of incidents. So there's what you desire to create and the manifestation of it. And in between, there's the bridge of incidents. And we might credit it to the bridge of incidents. And yes, bridge of incidents is part of the journey. So I value the journey and the destination. I'm a huge fan of this. I used to bias the destination before, and then I biased the journey. And so the journey is more important than the destination, or the destination is more important. And I see it as all one. And I value both. And so the bridge of incidents then are infinite potentialities, infinite. And we can look at what somebody else has created and say, we can model that, or we could do exactly what that is. And that can produce results, may or may not. And we can also discover our own unique way, which may or may not be a combination of that. It could be a combination. But you'll find at a deep level, the principles remain the same.
Exactly. Yep.
And then you understand the principles. And then that is impressed in the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind externalizes it in allowing you to see patterns. Mm-hmm. This is how I see patterns in reality, because they're patterns based on subconscious principles that I had affirmed, that I had seen universally. You know, it's just like, there's a lot of things we learn in life by following a process, and there's a lot of things we learn in life by experimenting. I believe both is important, and we need to find a ratio that's right for us. And when we find that right ratio within us, we then understand reality, and we don't have, to a deeper degree, in a unique way that is serving to identify this higher self-image and have it be the self-image that we express from.
Now, what are some principles that really helped you to find your own unique path based on your passions and desires?
So I like the ikigai, doing what you love to do, what you are good at. And what you're good at is very interesting. When I reflect back upon my life, I realize that the things that I do now, the things that I'm passionate about, the things that I'm good at, were actually always there. I loved reflecting when I was a kid. I loved coming up with ways of putting together systems to explain things when I was a kid. I was very much interested in seeing patterns in reality and seeing cause and effect relationship when I was a kid. I love to communicate and express these kinds of things since I was a kid. And I always like to have these deep conversations, which now we're having right now, and we're always having on our coaching sessions and my videos and so forth. And then a whole list of other things. So I believe these qualities were there in earlier stages of our life. And if we reflect back, we'll see, oh yeah, those are clues. And so I believe it, you know, that's a principle to me. It has to be something that I can track back and say, this is who I am. You know, this feels right for me. This is me. It is what I love to do also, because I could do this all day, you know, have fun like this and have conversations like this and share and create stuff around this all day. And what the world needs. Now that's almost an automatic, I find. It's almost like an automatic, because when we look back in our life, and I look at, okay, the success of the business right now, the current scope of business opportunities that I'm involved with right now and the success of it, my IT business, and even my IT career in IT and corporate, there were always aspects where there was many clues where I know that was the value I was to provide. How so? Because people used to ask me, like many people used to ask me back in the days, and I used to do it on the side. Can you fix my computer? Can you fix our home network? Can you come by our office and fix this? And computers, everywhere I would go, family, they would say, can you take a look at the computer for a second? Right? So I knew it was me. And then what happened was now the coaching and making videos and stuff, people would ask me for this kind of stuff while I was building my IT business. They would ask me for, so I knew it was me. Right. So people will give you the signs of what they want to receive from you. And I listen to those signs. So that's a principle to me. And, finally, what you can get paid for, because I believe giving and receiving is one. I see it as one. Like a lot of things, I believe in the way we work as humans is we like to take things apart so we can understand how it works and put it back together. I mean, that's how I learned how to work with computers.
Right.
Break the computer and fix it. Right. And so we do this with the mind, right? We take things apart, understand, we put things in categories in the mind, and then we say, oh, it's all one. And now we understand how it's all one. So I see giving and receiving as one, and what you put out comes back to you, law of correspondence. So you will have people pay for it, because not one time did somebody on my journey, unless it was within me, unless there was some kind of aspect within me, didn't say, hey, can you fix our computer? And they didn't say, I'll pay you for it. They did. And same with this kind of stuff. Can you teach me the business stuff can you show me how this works? Can you help me with this thing that I got? I'll pay you for it.
Right.
So when I align with these elements, the whole business building stuff becomes natural. And then there's these other principles. Like I believe money is a net result of creating products and services that are needed and useful. And there's many stories that one can identify with money, whatever they want. And there's some that are more aligned with our higher self, or some that are not as aligned. And for me, the most aligned is money is a net result of creating products and services that are needed and useful, multiplying quality of service, spirit of service, and quantity of service by focusing on marketing and innovation. So I prioritize in my business then marketing and innovation, which I learned from Peter Drucker. And I found that always worked. So what does that mean? Like marketing means getting it out there, as in like bringing awareness to my offering, which is very important. A lot of times it's mystical how it happens. People will message me and they'll say, I was meaning to contact you, and all of a sudden I feel I should contact you about this one service. Do you offer it? And I'll say, actually, I just created it last week. So it happens in a logical way and sometimes in these mystical ways.
Right.
So marketing is important. I prioritize that. Marketing and selling, I kind of group it together. And innovation is really coming up with things to better serve others. We value things that are innovative. And innovative means like value for others. So those are principles. And I have a whole bunch of other principles. I really like the book Principles by Ray Dalio. Have you ever read that book?
I have not read that one yet.
I love how he has a set list of principles, and it's who he is, and he accepts himself. And by creating these set principles that he lives by, he can maintain his flow, right? And I believe we all have our own principles, and they're unique and distinct to us. And some of them might be overlapping with others.
I love that. Creating self-awareness around your own principles. I wonder how many people have really done that before.
Yeah, I thought about one time sitting down and writing all these. I have them all over my place in my Instagram and my YouTube videos, so I could sit down and go through them. But there are commonalities. I'll see the same recurring ones, like the one I share with you right now. Those are belief systems that I choose to identify with, at least for now. That could change, because one of my favorite sayings I learned from this book called the Kabbalion. You ever read the Kabbalion?
I haven't read it, no.
It says all truths are half truths. And this one was really deep for me because I realized that in many stages of my life, I had identified with something, only to realize then in another stage that is no longer something that I need to identify with. It's a choice. And by now moving into this other identification, which was self-image based or is belief based, I can now move forward. Right? So it releases this rigidity. I mean, in entrepreneurship, this helps a lot because a lot of things change in the entrepreneurial world, right?
Right, exactly.
And if we get stuck on our old ways and try to hold on to it, we'll feel it inside.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start getting into that force-based reality. And to me, that's an indication that I need to release from that.
Right.
For me, it's always an indication of that's not, for me, the right thing. I have to be in flow, and that is breaking my flow. And well, I choose to be in flow, but that's breaking my flow. That's breaking my flow.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'll find is a new belief or a new way of looking at reality that now serves the flow, and then evolves the output that I create.
Yeah, that the concept of choosing, being aware enough to see when it's forced, and then choosing flow and in altering your beliefs. I mean, that's something that is a game changer for any entrepreneur and anybody who really wants to have a better quality of life and wants to increase their their happiness in their success within the business. And that's so powerful. How not everybody has the awareness of when they're in force and they want to hold on to that idea or that concept that they, it's a powerful thing when you come up with a concept and it's like, oh, it works so good. I had an experience a little while back where I was in that situation, and
really?
I was in that force space for a couple of years. And then I was like, you know what? That just didn't work. Like it worked for a period and then it didn't work anymore. Okay, so transitioning from that statement, when you're working with your clients, do you have stuff like this come up for them where they're in a place of force and then you're working with them and you kind of help them get out of that and more into the flow?
Yes.
So what do you tell them if somebody, because, I love this quote, I can't remember who said it, but you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle. They may be able to talk to other people about this, but they come to you and they don't even realize that they're in force because they're so like in it. They're so in the weeds of what they're doing.
You're asking, what do I say?
Yeah. Like, how would you help somebody come out of that force and get into, back into the flow and start?
I use what I learned from Neville that, and by the way, a lot of the things that I had learned that were very profound to me, I keep repeating them to myself or repeating it in the videos so that the affirmation it's continuously within my awareness. Mm-hmm. And he says, to the degree that I'm self-persuaded that they are this way, they will become so. Mm-hmm. And again, that whole thing of their higher self. So when I feel, and this is where because you're into energy, mm-hmm. and I'm into energy as well, I feel the energy of the interaction.
Yeah.
And I know that people reflect a mood within me. So I take the responsibility then. Mm-hmm. I say, it's within me. And if I feel something, I could say, oh, it's coming from them or coming from me or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I feel something. And if I feel whatever energy, tense energy, I release it. I let go of it internally. I do it. I can just do it. And the words come out differently. Mm-hmm. And the bridge of incidents, when we talk about bridge of incidents, mm-hmm. is, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Or, oh, that makes me think of something. And then I feel them release from it, or sort of pierce, so they're releasing. Maybe it's all within me, right? Because everyone is us pushed out.
Right.
And I use this process. So I don't know exactly what I say. And it's always the right thing to say. Yeah. And the words represent the state within myself. So I'm constantly practicing the way I do it. You can say this is the best way for me to explain it. Mm-hmm. Is practicing how I feel when I'm interacting with my client. Mm-hmm. So I aim to, when I'm on a call with them, and sometimes we do it in person, most of them, 90-70% is over Skype, is I'm feeling my energy, and I just make sure that my energy is one of flow. So this is why it's so important for me to be in flow, because in order for me I found for myself is I can't be out of flow and then show up and be in flow. It doesn't feel authentic, mm-hmm. to me.
Right.
I choose to be in flow all throughout the day, so that when I show up to the call, that awareness of flow, which is, by the way, what they want. which is where that result is the state. They calibrate it, or I calibrate to it. I have no idea if it's them or me, but I maintain the state within, and I observe if it's shifting in a direction where it's not flow, and I adjust it within, and it's reflected by my body language, my words, something. So that's my process.
You know, what I'm getting from what you're saying about that process is that because you're showing up in a state of flow, just by interacting with you, people, that force will be revealed, in that they will naturally get into a state of flow just by talking with you.
Yes.
Does that kind of sound?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I learned a lot about communication. I'm a huge fan of communication and words, body language, all that stuff. And I realized that all the best practices of all that stuff is actually from a place of expressing higher self. Like there are many individuals who are never formally trained in those areas, but yet when they express with the right words, they express with the right body language, and it's an authentic expression. And what I find is by honoring this state of flow, all that stuff, boom, you just, you know, I was always fascinated by people who had quick wits. And I was like, I want to be like them. I want to have quick wits, because when someone says, they know what to say. See, there's two ways of going about it fundamentally. It's like, what did they say? How do I say this? I'm going to say what they said next time. Or the whole being in flow. And then that's the energy, right? And if somehow the energy shifts in a different direction, you respond in a way, whatever way, word, sentence, that the energy remains in this direction or goes in a direction that's favorable. But one of my calibrating elements that I keep in my mind, I call it spirit of harmony. Because I learned it, back in the days from the Bible. It says, kingdom of heaven is within you. And Neville brings it up, and I love it. Kingdom of heaven is within you. And what does heaven mean to me? It means harmony. Spirit of harmony. What does that mean to me? I believe for me, it means benefit for me, benefit for others, benefit for divine or evolution. So I affirm that whatever shows up for me, whatever I express, is going to be from that place. And that's the one calibrator that needs to be impressed on my subconscious mind to automatically express it, because most of the nervous tics or whatever that shows up is a net result of the programming in the subconscious, because it's a subconscious revelation, right? So I aim to be in this spirit of harmony state in my subconscious, so that when interacting with clients or whoever, the expression in any time it goes into a direction where it's not spirit of harmony is the quick whip back to spirit of harmony. And so what happens then is they feel that you understand them. So there's no I'm right and they're wrong energy. Right. It's not like I'm doing this process with them and I'm saying, I fixed your problem. There's none of that energy. It's more of like, we're doing a dance kind of thing. It's a spirit of harmony energy. And the automatic response actually elevates them. So there's no putting down. There's no like, I can't believe you said that silly thing. None of that. It's the response actually elevates. So it's like, it keeps it going, automatic expression.
Now what?
And by the way, I want to add one more thing to that.
Oh, yeah.
I like what Neville says, externalized. Even automatic expression is like, it's very nuanced, but like a doing thing, but externalized. It's like, boom, it's like reflected. The outer world's a reflection of the inner world. Boom. Right?
What do you mean by externalize? Like, give an example.
So in my current reality, I have a lot of fun. I have great clients. We do a lot of fun things. I get to travel. I have all these amazing experiences, and I live this life that I've always wanted to live, and every day it gets better and better. All the changes happen within myself. I do all the changes within myself. And it is externalized in this outer world, which is received with my five senses. Okay, I can see this world. I can hear you. I can have this amazing conversation with you, which I enjoy so much, as an externalization of who I am. For example, if I was an unpleasant person, you wouldn't say like, "Oh, let's do a podcast together. Let's share this unpleasantness," right? Unless that was you. But to have this experience, I have to be it and then it's externalized as this experience.
Right. Yeah. So it's like the expression.
Yes.
Right.
Expression.
Yeah. Amazing. So for people who, well, first of all, tell me, what kind of clients do you tend to see with your coaching? Like, what kinds of problems do people come with, or challenges?
Most of it, if not all of it, is about the self-image. Mm-hmm. Either they directly say that that's what they want to work on, or they indirectly show up with other things, and then we have a conversation, and they understand even more so because they kind of had the hunch within themselves that it is the self-image. So they're entrepreneurs. They're either aspiring entrepreneurs, or they've been on the entrepreneurial journey for a while, or some are very successful entrepreneurs, very, very successful. And they want to further understand this higher self, even if they don't directly use this terminology. A bunch of them don't. I speak in the terminology that's resonant to them. They're looking to do this thing and be more of this self-image that's their higher self, and have it express in everything they do in their business, whether it's optimizing their business so they could be better leaders, or so they can create more products and services, or so they could take action, because that's a big one. They feel like they lack focus, or they're afraid to take action. Well, automatic self-expression or externalization of the self-image that is living in a place of ikigai, which is doing what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you get paid for, is good at selling, is good at marketing, because of where it comes from. It's the desire to express that. It's a desire to share it with others. And so there isn't any blockages there. So I help them with those pieces in all those different areas. But yeah, it really does come down to self-image. And, I like to work with entrepreneurs, because I've had others reach out to me for relationships. I prefer not to go into the deeper trauma stuff or something, because there's some of this stuff. I focus on success and entrepreneurship, business and personal development. There are some aspects in the subconscious that are trauma-based, and these need to be handled with a certain level of expertise by someone. It's not by any means what I get into. I've dealt with trauma in my past, and I've resolved it. Some of it with myself using my processes, and some of it working with others, because it's very important to recognize a person, recognize that. And if I do find, I had someone reach out to me for coaching about a week ago. Yeah, he reached out to me, and then through the conversation, I had a hunch that he wouldn't be a right match, only because I believed some of his aspect was from childhood trauma. We got on a phone call, and we were in agreement that it was from a childhood trauma. And no matter what I did for him, I wasn't going to go. I was not interested in going that deep. And so I referred him to somebody, and I have somebody that I refer individuals like that to, and I don't get nothing out of it, because I just want the healing,
Right.
And I choose to be in this entrepreneurial space, but that happens sometimes. So, but I prefer, my preference, my heart is in the entrepreneurial world. That's what I love.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. And it definitely seems resonant with the kind of things that you're working on, and with your videos in this conversation too. What are 3 tips or strategies that those people that you feel like, just right now in the space, that you feel like those people could really hear right now for working on their self-image and working towards greater success and fulfillment in their businesses?
Well, 3 tips is, number 1, take inventory of where something shows up in a conflict with the other person. Just write it down in that moment, or 5 seconds after. Don't judge it or anything like that. When you're more in, I call it a relaxed state. We don't have to get into state akin to sleep. That's another topic probably for another episode. Right. One of my favorite. When you're more relaxed and you're out of your head, you can reflect upon that and see, what was within yourself that created that meaning. That's something that I do on a regular basis, because in that moment it can be really tense. Number 2 is to track where we're giving the meaning of shame to experiences during the day. So it manifests in different ways. And entrepreneurs it'll manifest in many different ways. One way is they're hard on themselves. Mm-hmm. And I believe one of the reasons why they're hard on themselves is because they feel bad about themselves at the end of the day they didn't accomplish. Right. And the subconscious is manifesting the shame, which came from past. So shame is an aspect that needs to be worked on within. So any indications of shame needs to be released, because I know when I released it by doing subconscious work, mm-hmm. I no longer found myself doing certain behaviors in which I felt shame afterwards. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, procrastination was a big one for me, because I'm very motivated, I'm very driven. And what ended up happening was I would not be as productive as I'd like to be. And then I would be like, I'd feel the shame. And then when I released it, I found I was actually being more productive, because the externalization of shame didn't happen in the area that it could be externalized, right?
So where powerful.
That's a big one. And number 3, I believe it's important Neville calls it pruning shears of revision. Mm-hmm. And it's a simple exercise that I love to do at the end of the night before going to sleep, is reflect back, and ideally in a state akin to sleep, which is essentially right before you fall asleep, is I reflect back on the different experiences that I've had during the day that I would have liked to have seen played out a certain way. Mm-hmm. And there's no blame. There's none of that, not from a dwelling standpoint, but rather from a transformational standpoint, as in I changed the story. So let's say you and I had a conflict, right? And at the end of the day, I said, I wish that there wasn't a conflict. I wish there was this harmonious interaction. So I would imagine in my mind before going to sleep, you and I having this harmonious interaction. And then I'd say, wow, Sarah, you're such a you're such a self-aware person, as am I. I love having these interactions with you. We always manage to figure out, no matter what shows up, we manage to figure it out. And by doing this, you release it. To me, it's an imaginal act of forgiveness, which, by the way, impresses the subconscious.
Right.
And the next day I will behave different towards you. I won't relive that. I won't show up with a bias that Sarah is this way. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say I didn't do it, and we had this recurring situation that happened every day that we got into conflict. I'm further affirming, and we're creating. And so if then like this went on for 30 days and then I did this revisional act and then I show up, I might still have the bias because it was so much affirmation. But if I catch it early, then every day I'm given another opportunity to go harmonious. And then that will repeat, affirm the subconscious. And then we'll have a bias towards always having a harmonious conversation or harmonious interaction. So that's been really helpful for me.
That almost sounds like relationship hacking. Like that almost sounds like a I don't know, like a hacking trick kind of thing. But it's not to say trick in a way that devalues it, but
by the way, when I do it, I don't do it from a place of denial. I see it as the highest, that whole thing I was saying earlier about the spirit of harmony, the highest potentiality of that interaction that benefited you, benefited me, and benefited others. So in other words, in a way, I'm kind of speaking to your higher self, right? And I'm speaking to my higher self and then divine self.
And seeing the higher, what actually, like the truth of the situation.
Yeah, because you actually want it to be that way. Exactly. I don't think anybody wakes up and says, I want to have an inharmonious interaction today.
You know, I love that you mentioned, and we'll wrap it up here in just a minute. I love that you mentioned denial, because I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions with this kind of work is that like, oh, I don't have to face any of the reality. I don't have to face any of the, potentially negative things that are happening. Just think positive, just like say the affirmations. And so thank you for bringing that piece in of like, it's not denial, it's getting real with yourself and about the situation. And then it's changing the story about it. Like there's the real, there's like the perception real, but then there's the real of the higher self and the higher level situation that when you get clear on one, you can tune into the other.
I want to add one more piece to that. Mm-hmm. I do something which I call controlled chaos. Mm-hmm. And controlled chaos is deliberately placing myself in challenging situations. Mm-hmm. And I do it in a ratio that's right for me to grow, whether it be a business thing, whether it be a difficult conversation. So yes, and those are and we have to do it in a ratio that's right for us.
Right.
I believe if we do it too much, at least for me, we can be so overwhelmed by it and we get lost and we won't be able to find flow again. Mm-hmm. So I like a good ratio of flow plus controlled chaos, because it's during I didn't call them controlled chaoses when they happened. They were just chaoses.
Right, yeah.
Those chaoses transformed my life. Every one of my chaoses from my past were blessings. And when you get to a certain state, you can say, well, those are blessings, right? And then you can call it controlled chaos. Mm-hmm. But I also believe, for me, it's important to place myself in some actively controlled chaos scenarios so that I can grow. So yeah, that prevents that whole denial thing from happening, because when in those situations, you're really confronting yourself, right?
Yes.
It's like it shows up right then and there. And you might not even realize, because in that chaotic situation, you're kind of lost in it. Mm-hmm. This is why post-reflection is so important. Because then after that, I have fun. I sit down, and sometimes certain chaos situations, it'll take me days to break it down and understand. I'll reflect till I get to a place of like, oh, that's what it is. And this feeling of, oh, that's what it is.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've changed after that.
Yeah. Yeah. It just clicks and you just know it.
And this is, sometimes working with someone helps with this as well, because you can do it with yourself, and there's one's not better. Sometimes you work with yourself, sometimes you work with others. I do things with myself. I do things with others. And, we, again, our inner voice, we know the answer.
Right. Exactly. Sometimes it helps just, hearing it from another person. Like you said before, we all these principles are the same, or, there's so many, principles that stay the same, but just the nuance and the way that somebody describes it, or just the wording or the voice or the timing, makes all the difference.
Yes.
Sometimes just reading a book and, I've read the book or listened to the book 1,000 times, but then one time I'll listen to it or read it, and there's this one phrase that's like, okay, this is why I had to read it. Or like a conversation, there are actually some things in this conversation that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I needed to hear today.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. Yes. And I think there are people who are watching and listening right now who have had the same experience. And I would encourage you all to go back and listen again, because there are some really big and profound concepts that we've talked about today that, sometimes it's hard to grasp all of it at once. So like just going back and re-listening and seeing, okay, what did I need to hear today?
So much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you.
I feel like we've gone into like some,
I know.
like beyond, we've gone beyond somewhere.
Yeah.
Now. And after this laptop, I'm going to go to the gym and be like, whoa, did that even happen?
So just to recap, this from my perspective, this is really all about flow. And it was really all about alignment and following your passions and being true to yourself, being true to your higher self. What would you say from your perspective?
Yes, I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree, yes.
Cool. So it really, that's what your journey was. And we're still on this journey of flow and discovery of, what's next on that flow journey.
Yes. So much fun. More unravelings to follow as the days go by.
Exactly. Unravelings and then weaving it all together.
Basket weaving.
This is all about basket weaving.
Did I say
it? Yeah.
New metaphor.
All right, Joseph. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Amazing.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for watching, listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.